So, quick video around this piece. So I have a longer video which is all about the 3 keys of realism, talking about how we can get our pieces looking more realistic. And this is a piece that I created because I wanted to show my students how they could make their pieces softer and more realistic by just changing a few different techniques. So you have the left hand side, and there's nothing wrong with this. There's no right or wrong. There's the left hand side, which you can see has got more open. The details are more open. There are more fur details in here than there are in the right hand side. Let me just zoom into that a little bit and then we can see a bit better. So if I just move this down a little bit, you can see on the head there, we can see there's more details in here, as in fur details. There's less in here, but there's more value. So the fur is actually denser and darker. And one of the things that I find when starting to use coloured pencils is that it becomes quite scary to get values correct. So trying to get your darks dark enough and your lights light enough. And what tends to happen is that everything becomes a little bit too light, and then everything suffers. So your darks become too light, your lights become too light, and everything then becomes a little bit too light. And then it's quite hard, you know, to get that real realism. So this was an exercise just to show a few areas about where little tiny changes can be made so that your work can look more realistic. You know, and like I say, there's nothing wrong with this side at all, and I'm not saying this side is the you know, the epitome of realism. I think, you know, if I was doing this on its own, I'd probably bring a little bit more information into this one, but I just kind of wanted to show a little bit of the extreme. So it's more about getting a softness, particularly with when we're talking short-haired dogs. We want to show that it's short-haired, and a lot of the time what happens is we tend to concentrate on the details. Because we're drawing realism, we tend to concentrate on the details. And what happens is we put all of the details in and it starts to look more textured. And I had a lot of comments on this side actually that people were saying, oh, this looks like a wet dog and this looks like a dry dog. And if you've got a Labrador or a black dog, a black short-haired dog, you'll know that when you look at that dog, you can't see all of the individual hairs. If you look at any dog, you can't see the individual hairs unless you're right up in its face. What you can see are the very subtle changes in lights and darks, and that's kind of what I wanted to really portray in this. That actually, we don't need to concentrate on the details. What we need to concentrate on are the values. And one of the things that I've really realised over the last few years, I started teaching in 2019, and having seen lots and lots of my students' work, and I teach thousands of people to draw, what I've seen is that we all go through a stage. Every single one of us who learns how to draw realism goes through the same process. Different timescales, but same process. We start and we believe that realism comes from details. So details are what we concentrate on first. Then we go, oh, hang on a second. If you're working with a good teacher, they're going to talk about values, or you're going to start picking up on it from being in groups and all of that kind of stuff. Hang on a second. Values are actually really important. So then you start bringing values in as well as the details. And then you reach that point where it's like, actually, the details don't really matter. The details actually aren't the fur lines, but are the little tiny changes in value in the fur. And that's what's going to make something look nice and sleek and realistic. Now, this is all by the by. Everybody has their own style. Some people are have quite a stylized realism where the hair is far more sort of portrayed. It's maybe a little bit more like this side. I'm not saying that's wrong. What I'm saying is if you're wanting a softer, smoother outcome, then concentrating on these values rather than trying to get all of the hair details in is going to give you the result that you want. Black fur is really, really joyful to draw, and it takes on the environment that the animal's in. It kind of absorbs all of the colours and everything in there. So with this one, I used blacks, I used some yellows, I used some blues. If you are one of my members, then you've got access to both videos of me drawing them, and you can see how I drew them. And it's just, the pencil strokes are different. So they're smaller, they're a little bit more carefully added, whereas this one I'm kind of adding sort of like quite strong fur strokes. Here I'm really concentrating on the darks rather than trying to bring all of the hairlines and everything like that in. So I think if you're struggling with getting your work really realistic, or you've kind of hit a wall and you're thinking, I can't get any further, look at how you're using your details. Look at what you're concentrating on the most. And if your details are the things that you're concentrating on the most, there's a massive development leap to take by dropping those details as you'll see in the details and starting to pick up on the tiny shifts and subtle changes in values.